Hello and welcome to the A&P. I am Alex Johansson and my co-host Patrick McCallum. Patrick,
Hello, everyone. How are you getting on?
we're having logical discussions about the state of the world. Let's get into it, brother. Hey, Patrick.
How are you getting on, buddy? How are things?
Oh, looking like Arc 2 for David Betz and Mary Harrington on UnHerd. We didn't hear anything from Ms. Harrington in our previous episode. Pretty sure she's going to have some things to say here.
Oh, yes.
I think
really interesting part now coming up. Really interesting.
Well, I backed it up just a little bit so we can have a little bit of crossover time, and we'll go ahead and let Mr. Betz cook. We have Doubting Thomas in studio today.
Excellent to see you both, gentlemen. Patrick, Alex.
Woohoo! And he'll be shooting us info and giving us updates and things as we need them to make sure that we can be as accurate and as optimized as we can be. I always appreciate you. Thank you for being in today, Thomas. Here we go.
When there is a large difference between what people expect to receive, primarily in material benefits, but not solely in material benefits, prestige and like also factor in. When they have a strong expectation of one thing and what they receive is another, and there's a big difference in between them, that is a dangerous situation. It's an expectation gap which tends, so the literature suggests, to lead to turmoil.
It's like being deceived, right? It's like being lied to, and you continue to get lied to, you're going to feel just that way, right?
I think a lot of the politicians have been doing that over the last number of years, all across the globe.
Right. Well, there's just a feeling of disenfranchisement, right? Yeah. Like we have a national identity, we have a culture, and the elites, for some reason, seem to be wanting to force non-assimilating populations into our population, and it doesn't make any sense except perhaps as a gap to fill our reproductive issues. We're not even at 2.1 in the entire Western world, and the only groups that are actually over that rate is the Muslim world. Everyone else, even those countries in Africa that were recently up till about 4 or 5 years ago at 2.1 are now under 1.6, 1.7.
Yes.
So here we go.
I think at our current moment, for reasons that are perfectly obvious, I mean, there's a big, shiny, bright light pointed at me, so I can't adequately judge the age of the room, but I do see some young people. Again, it's not a controversial statement to say that there is a very obvious difference in the mood of the young population as opposed to the older population with respect to their ability to do things that were normally expected of the middle classes not so long ago, literally of your own parents, or in fact of people who might just be like 10 or 15 years older than you.
You mean?
Right. This is the point where we stopped yesterday. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We talked a little bit about that at the end of the last episode, so we'll go ahead and let her ask her question and see where it goes.
About owning a house,
home ownership, right, and everything that flows from its home ownership. Rate of savings at equivalent age is significantly different, and everything that flows from that. So if you don't have any money and you don't own a home and you're living in a bedsit, then you're relatively unlikely to get married and start to produce children. And
so in the 60s and 70s, on one income, you could do 2 vacations a year, have a car, get a house.
A lot of young people can't even afford to go out, say, on a weekend and have a few pints or...
Right, and you end up just playing on your phone because everybody's going to have a phone, and then you meet people that way, and then you don't have the ability to organically develop appropriate relationships, right?
No.
So
unless we go back to the 19th century and you're keeping the babies under the bed. We have a society which is now producing expectation gaps. And moreover, there's every reason to suspect, I would suggest going further, and we'll probably get into it, that expectation gap is going to accelerate pretty damn quick on account of technological changes which are about to do to the white-collar sector what industrial offshoring did to the blue-collar sector.
Patrick, you were talking about AI and how it's going to be taking jobs. Especially, what was it, the attorney thing you were telling me about, where there's going to be AI attorneys that are literally just going to rip through case files and generate cases. And
you can even see it in a lot of secretarial posts. Before, there used to be, say, a small army of administration staff in most buildings.
Right.
Now you just have 1 or 2 who normally are using AI. Answer 90% of their workload. You have 2 people doing the job of, say, 8
right
at the moment.
Well,
And that's only a
computers
small example of AI at the moment.
computers are super efficient too.
There is this revolution of AI across the globe, across all sectors. And what we're finding now in the last 12 months, especially, there was a news report that came out of Britain of undergraduates coming out into the workplace. A lot of them now would be English graduates, software developers, so on. We're finding it impossible to even get work placements. Unbelievable. But they're the first of many, many industries that are going to be hit more and more with AI.
But what businesses are going to be mostly affected, do you think?
Well, the most interesting news story I've read there recently is from the UK. It's an example of young people, young graduates coming out of with mainly English degrees, software developers, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of their jobs now have been taken by AI. Any layperson can go on to ChatGPT and ask, "Can you write me a program in Excel to do such and such?" And it'll spit it out straight away for you. You don't have to go. You don't have to ring a developer, or even if you're interested in game development now, ChatGPT, and there's other AIs that are coming out better than ChatGPT around programming.
I got an advertisement that's like, "Hey, you want to write books? Just plug in a bunch of characters and we'll do it for you." I was like, "What?"
Actually, a lot of authors have been caught out doing that. There's a German author that was caught out recently. When authors are writing books, they normally send out a pilot of their book, say to certain readers, and this author sent out novel out to her selected readers, and one of the readers was reading through it and came across AI prompts in the middle of that copy.
Oh no.
So authors, a lot of authors now are being caught out using AI to write books.
Right.
And they're saying that we didn't get the AI to write all the book. We just use it for editing, or, still.
Or tone change. Oh, I wanted to change the tone. Well, then you should have written it with the other tone. Right.
The problem with AI is a large language model. And the reason why artists and other people are getting upset is it's trained on other books. It's trained on other work. You're pretty much stealing another author's work.
All right, let's get back to Mr.
Which is also going to lead on to more young people with no hope.
Oh, disaffected for sure. Even further.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to be at the house. They're going to force a bunch of people into your neighborhood you don't want, and you're going to have nothing to do but rebel.
Yes.
It's a recipe for disaster. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
25 years ago already, 30 years ago. Who are these people? Those are your insurgent leaders, basically. That's what Peter Turchin, I think, who's spoken here before, has described as a situation of elite overproduction, where you get a cadre of people who have been trained and acculturated to expect they were going to join the elite, which have that ambition thwarted. That number of people might, according to the most recent, be about 39%.
When I interviewed Peter Turchin here a little while ago, he was already mapping out this territory and the gap in expectations that you're describing. As of just, I think, the beginning of this week, there was an article in the Financial Times reporting that the number of new starter jobs in the UK has shrunk by more than 30% since the introduction of ChatGPT. The AI jobs catastrophe is here, and it's not unreasonable to assume that there will be a great many disaffected, indebted, and potentially quite restive young people out there.
So in short, there are 3 good reasons to think that this is coming. And
just like you said, 33%.
Yeah, that was actually
massive.
the same news.
Was it the
same news
article
I read myself.
Nice. All right, here we go.
There are 3 good reasons to think that it might, all things being equal, be resisted, but all things are not equal because those things are not as operative now or plausibly in the near future as they have been in the past.
May
in
I
a
ask
nutshell.
for a clarification?
Yes.
When we say civil war, what do we mean? For a non-war studies normie over here, what do we mean when we say civil war?
So I use the term civil war in a very specific sense. And I know if there are academics in the room, of course, like there are many definitions of civil war, and we could spend a long time talking about that. I use the term civil war in this sense. It is to refer to a form of war in which the belligerents, 2 or more, or all belligerents, 2 or more, were under the same sovereign authority at the outset of the conflict. That's essentially the.
That makes sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Got anything different on that one, Thomas, or does that sound right to you?
I mean, it's a broad. Yes, it's fine.
Okay, I think it's a working definition. I think that's acceptable.
Yeah.
As far as what I mean by civil war from a definitional perspective.
In this situation, I assume you do not mean two neighbors, though, arguing over a fence.
No, I'm not trying to reduce it down to that level, although quite that level. Fundamentally, I'm just trying. I'm trying to do a few things. Firstly, I don't want to call it just a war because I want to highlight the internal origin of it. It's not it's not external in its origin. I also don't want to euphemize war by calling it struggle, conflict. Actually, I slightly have in previous, I talked about turmoil and whatever.
So I have a question, Patrick. So if that kind of strife or that kind of internal sovereignty issue of civil war happens in the UK, what does that look like for the Republic of Ireland? What does that look like for you guys?
Well, ever since Brexit, we've modified our trade routes in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually, our new trade ships, we sail literally, most of our goods go around the British in a lot of ways, or fly over them.
Right. Well, I mean, but for the direct connect you have on the border with the 6 counties of Northern Ireland.
How would this affect Northern Ireland?
Well, yeah, and then the border you have, since you have people that just walk right over that border anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Is that just going to spill into the Republic?
I would say an awful lot of more refugees come from the UK, yes. That would probably be our biggest impact, would be the amount of people fleeing the UK, not to us or to France, Germany, so on. It would have a massive effect, not just in the Republic, but it would have a massive effect all across Europe. It would have massive ripple effects, which would probably lead to more conflict in those countries as well, which are already at breaking point.
Crazy.
So he is right in a lot of ways. This would have a massive ripple effect, not just in the Republic, but all across Europe.
Well, do you think that you would then have an internal issue the same as the UK if that happens? If all those immigrants come running on down, are you then going to end up in Ireland with the same kind of thing if the balloon drops in the UK?
Yes. We would have a massive public backlash. Very similar to what would probably happen in the UK. Very, very similar. We're already having a lot of unrest at the moment in the Republic.
Yep.
There's flashbacks all across the Republic at the moment.
Yep. Well, Ballymon's always going to be there, though, so we can keep faith in that.
Yeah, you can't keep Ballymon down.
Keep the word war in there because I'm a war studies professor, and that's my inclination. I also think it's correct. But to highlight its civil nature. Now, of course, if one takes that definition, yes, there is a very wide range of flavors of civil war. You might call it, whether it's in contemporary times, from one region to another, from one country to another. It'll look different, take different forms, and from one historical period to another. I might have used other terms and occasionally lapse into the use of other terms like revolution or rebellion or uprising, and there are qualities of it which I do believe might otherwise merit that term. But I wanted to talk about civil war because, at least to my mind, when one talks about revolution or rebellion, it implies something spasmodic and explosive, right? So that it
huge flashpoint, right? Something happens, and it's a catalyst for the rest of the thing. Now, he said something interesting the other day when we were checking this out. He said that there might be a point identified later as when it started. Like, we didn't know that the Battle of Fort Sumter was the first, right? Like, but you got to back up and figure out
it's only later on when you're examining historical documents and
right
basically looking back
that you can see where the flashpoint was, right?
Yes.
So
figures, it has a massive effect, but then it's over. Okay. Whereas, and I think that in the context of the discussion I'd like to have, or what I want to say to people, that it's not like that. It's not quite like an explosive thing. It's not an event. It is a process that has a long prehistory. We didn't get to the situation that I just described as being in the sweet spot for Civil War causation immediately. This is the process of many years of policy decisions. And moreover, it isn't going to be over swiftly. This is one of the very like well-established characteristics of civil wars, is they tend to be longer.
Let's take a moment then to pause before we get into
That's what I mean.
the conception of the war itself, and start with these kind of conditions that David's laid out. Mary, I want to hear your response to it. Do you resonate with that characterization of the conditions that are currently set up in this country, and do you feel they are as much on a knife edge as David portrays them to be?
I suspect this is one of those questions which will be answered very differently depending on where you're sitting. So, for example, I can think of a great many older homeowners who live in pleasant parts of London or the southeast who would be honestly just bewildered by the story that David is telling. I can also imagine
It's because they're disconnected from the youth,
Yes.
right? They're disconnected from the people who are the most disaffected, right?
Yeah. There's a
And-
massive disconnect.
Right.
Really, really big.
Huge.
that there
Yeah.
are residents of, say, Croydon or Dagenham who might scratch their heads and think, maybe. And there are people who responded to the riots in Southport last summer with a sense that something was coming to a head. My gut feeling is that the principal scissor is age and class, but also the principal scissors are age and class, and that really this cuts across both left and right. Because in my observation, it is much more common, even on the right, to be hopeful that we can resolve our differences, come together, find a new settlement, reintegrate Britain, British values, etc., and so on. For those.
That doesn't look like that's happening, because it doesn't look like
No.
Labour or the Tories really give a shit about that happening, or they would have
It's
paid
not,
attention to the constituency.
I think what's happening in Britain, happening all across most of the G7 countries, the old established parties are not resonating with the young people anymore.
Right.
The Tories are not resonating with them. Labour is not resonating with them. Even the PDs over there are not resonating with them. Social Democrats and so on.
Right.
No one is resonating with the young people anymore.
Right. And the deal that was
No,
made
that's why
with
you
the deal that was made with the world after World War II is dead. Like, that's a dead issue. And all this upgrade in technology is making it so we have tons of disaffected youth. And they have nothing to do with those idle hands.
Are really, really. You can even see it, say, if you go down to any local bar on a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You can even see there's no. It's like their spirit has been broken in a lot of ways.
Right.
Which is an awful shame to see.
Well, I want them to succeed like I want everyone to succeed, as long as they're good faith actors, right?
Yeah.
People who grew up in the 1990s when the world, when things really could only get better, also we were told. Whereas I think for example, for those of my acquaintances who went to university, or rather didn't go to university during COVID, and who've come out into a very different employment landscape, a very different housing landscape, and a very different economy, and who are perhaps staring down the barrel of ChatGPT eating their job, may feel quite differently about it.
Right, combined with serious debt that they have taken on without having it explained to them what that debt means and how it lasts, especially, well, the United States. Like, you cannot default on student loans. You can default on everything else, but you will be paying those student loans back, right?
Yeah, that's one thing that shocked me about the debt ratio in the US especially was unbelievable.
And there's some
especially
other
for young people.
Yeah, there's some other debt things I'll talk to you about offline to see if it's even something we could bring up in future episodes. But there's some very interesting things going on, and I wanted to run them by you before we brought it up. So, all right, here we go.
Yeah, that's another video for people to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, there's some debt issues that have to be talked about, but I don't know how to delicately bring them up without making some groups of folks feel really uncomfortable. So,
Yes.
And may experience some of the pressures which are currently bearing down on the more precariously situated people in this country, may experience those pressures much more directly and feel much more willing to consider any option as in response to that. you could probably put disparate people from different socioeconomic groups together in the room, and they would disagree violently on how plausible it is. I honestly don't know where the balance where the balance of the energy lies. I mean, where I live in small town England, it just doesn't feel plausible. But then I compare notes with friends who live in quite different parts of the country, and when I hear what they say, it does.
They've got a bit of knife crime there in London, and there's a lot of no-go zones, and they're starting this thing where they're going to charge you if you drive through London more than twice in a week. They're charging like 12 pounds to cross the town. So you end up paying like 24 pounds like 3 times a week. So that's another 12, 36, 72 pounds a week just to go to work.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like HOV lanes or charge lanes that they have in other places in the world, like where you have to pay to play. Like you don't get to get on that road unless you pay. Toll roads. They're toll roads is functionally
we
what
have
they
toll
are.
roads over here. It's the main Dublin road has tolls, and you can buy a weekly pass. I think it's about $7 for a normal van.
Right.
You buy weekly and monthly.
In California, we have a thing called Fast Pass, and you can cross bridges, and it just takes the money directly out of the account. However, you get a citation that you have to pay that's like 4 times that if you don't get Fast Pass. It's pretty bad. Yeah. So if you don't pay to play the government, then you don't play, and then you pay even more.
Our tolls are well. There's ways around our tolls. We have options to do alternative routes. So the fast route is a toll, but if you have time in your hand, you can take another 40-minute detour, get around them. So we're not kind of forced to it. They were talking about doing something similar in Dublin with traffic coming through Dublin. But that was shut down. That was really shut down very quickly.
I don't think the local council really wanted that to happen. They would have a lot of
the council just said, we're not doing that.
Well, they're too busy making money off their sweet landlord deals. So
yeah, that's true.
Does disagreement about the plausibility of a civil war actually decrease the likelihood of a civil war? Does that make no difference? If people think it can't happen to them, does that actually make it less likely that they would join in should something happen? Or is that actually just wishful thinking?
I don't know is the answer to that. It's I'm not sure how I would. I mean, as a scholar, I don't know how I would answer that. My gut feeling, though, since you've asked me the question, I'm sitting in front of the room, is that it doesn't matter and potentially makes it worse in the sense that the people who are most volatile are usually those whose delusions have been shattered in the most dramatic way. So if you're in denial about a thing and then it occurs to you, you tend to get the most powerful counter reaction. And so I fear that a population which is kind of burbling along thinking that it's all hunky-dory, that when finally faced with the reality, what's the scholarly term for freaks out?
I mean, arguing against myself and in favour of David's point for a moment, I take an interest in 17th century politics because it seems to me at times that we're in the middle of running the 17th century backwards, which would in itself support your thesis.
Right. The last time I believe there was a civil war in England was 1649, the peasant uprising.
Yes, the peasant uprising.
So
it had also civil wars before that.
Right. Well, it's like 375 years ago. Well, the thing is they don't have a formal constitution that gives them free speech and things like that, right? So it's kind of by feel, it's all kind of touchy-feely by feel. There isn't a set of rules. It's just, well, I'll be treated like an Englishman. Well, that's okay, awesome. But what exactly does that mean? Well, you know what it means. It's cultural. Well, your culture is being destroyed right now. So what does it mean now? Well, it's undefined, and that makes it even worse, right?
Yes.
And then
that actually angers young people more as well.
Mm-hmm.
They look around, they're not getting a job, they can't get a house, they can't get a partner.
So
now their country is slipping away from them. This is, as he said, this is an entire recipe for a civil war.
Is that civil war along racial lines? Is it along socioeconomic lines? I mean, what does that even look like?
That is going to be the big question. Like when a civil war normally happens, there's usually most countries it's us versus them. But also there's civil wars where the country just splits into multiple factions.
Well, I think they were talking in the United States if something wild like that goes on, it's going to pretty much be the city folk versus the country folk, and the city folk get fed by the country folk, so that you lose. You lose, right? We need food. We're not giving you food. We're fighting you. Like, you don't get food.
You also, in civil wars, you also have certain populations who don't get involved in either side and try to just stay completely out of it. Seen that scenario play out through history as well.
Right. Well, they come up on your property. You don't have a lot of choice, bud. Like, you know, hey, what team are you on? I'm on team Get the Hell Off My Lawn. Right?
Yes.
Well, no, you have to pick a team because we have guns and you get to choose now. And well, I'm going to pick the team that has the guns on my lawn.
Everyone's always thought about, say, take the US, for example. What would happen if the US fell into civil war? Would it be North versus South, or would it be just handful of states versus another handful of states and the rest kind of sit in the fence? No, as I said, no one will really know how it would play out.
So in Ireland, you have, say, the difference between County Cork and, say, County Mayo, right?
Yes.
They're a significantly different kind of Irish person, right?
Yes.
Different accents, different everything, right? But the same is true in the United States. The people who live in the Northeast are not like the ones who live in the Northwest or the South or the South. You know what I'm saying? Southwest, like.
The US would be slightly different, from Ireland, because you would have massive swathes of population who identify, say, as Texan, for example.
Right.
Who would be think wildly differently, say, from California or Washington, for example. Even though you would all be under the US flag, you all have vastly different ideas.
Well,
Where in Ireland, we still have that sense of being Irish.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Remember Roger Lynch was talking about that when he said that the people would identify as, so if Austin, Texas created its own capital, like the conservative capital, and then DC or San Francisco or New York or whatever became the liberal type capital, both of them saying that they had sovereignty, and that would be kind of an issue because both of them would believe that they were right and righteous, except that because Donald Trump won, functionally that would end up being more optimally sovereign, right? And the others would be a rebel faction functionally, right? So,
but as I say, one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter or rebel, or if you know, it depends on what side you're going to fall on that fence.
Yeah.
But would I ever see it somewhere like the US, say, fall into civil war? I wouldn't say it'd be civil war. It'd be more like a really bad divorce.
That's
where,
funny.
say, California just went out on its own, or Texas went out on its own.
Well, Texas every year votes that they're going to stay in the union, but the Civil War pretty much sealed that one. Like, you're not leaving.
Yeah.
If you're a state in the United States, you're not leaving. The other ones will pull you down in the pot like lobsters.
By the way, Scotland and the UK have something very similar as well. It's the marriage of you better stay with us or else.
Right. Well, it seems to me like the UK is London and its subsidiary suburbs, right? Yeah. And then you have Scotland's money, and North Ireland does all of the grunt paperwork bureaucracy. What does Wales do? Just give people
Wales is very much into heavy mining. Agriculture and mining is Wales' bread and butter.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. And also, the Welsh are really, really good at their job, especially when it comes to agriculture. They're really good. A lot of farmland that is really rich is from Wales. A lot of heavy industries down in Wales as well.
Got it. All right, let's get back to Ms. Harrington.
Because of what happened in 1649. But I remember
what did happen in 1649 to those of us who you didn't do great in the history GCSE?
The English Civil War happened in 1640. We have not had civil conflict in this country since the 17th century. I was sort of rummaging around in the history books about that period recently, and none of them could agree on what set it off. And none of them could agree really on when precisely it even started. And it's clear if you read it, if you read about it, that there were all the way through. There were areas of the country which wanted to stay neutral. There were whole factions that didn't really know what side they ought to be on, and that it was incredibly mixed and patchwork, and actually incredibly chaotic.
One of the things that you just mentioned about this discussion in the academic literature as to when did this thing actually start? What, right? And indeed, when did it when did it end? It seems to be very typical of civil wars and of irregular wars in general. For the most part, you don't have start dates for them. They're more in the sometimes they're more in the nature of a chronic illness, which kind of flare up at times and they go into remission. Or other times, civil war emerges, and so people in the time of that say, "Oh my God!" Like, okay, now we're at war, and then historians afterwards look back and say, "Well, the tipping point was actually some period before." So normally, when you read a book, say, if you read a big academic book on the American Civil War, it's not going to start with the bombardment of Fort Sumter, although that was the kind of oh shit moment where everybody said, well, yes, we're at war now. I mean,
oops, war.
they're going to start.
Yeah, but like most civil wars, it breeds up slowly, builds up slowly,
right,
like a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm. That's what he
There's
said.
always one or two sparks will set it off.
There might be 10 chapters before you get to the point where people are actually shooting at each other, kneecapping each other, and doing all of the other obvious stuff that says you're at war.
Civil war is something you realize you're in. You don't have a
In
moment.
other words, there is a tipping point. The tipping point has occurred before you realize I'm rolling downhill. Or for Americans, if you're in Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner cartoon, and Wile E. Coyote is run off the cliff, and there's always like a 2-second pregnant moment where it halts before gravity. Okay, so he's gone over the tipping point.
Just in the context of Britain now, would Wile E. Coyote be in the air?
I feel we've passed the tipping point already. We are probably past the tipping point. When this story is written up, it will be determined that essentially the ingredients and the processes were all working in a time which is now in our historic past.
So I think he's right. I think that the government there has pushed them to the brink.
Before Civil War, as Thomas pointed out there, civil strife always precedes a civil war, which we are seeing quite a lot on the streets.
Right. Well, and plus you have two-tier policing and a lot of other advantages given to those who aren't citizens, and giving them the franchise, right? We're giving you the franchise of citizenship without actually being a citizen and without assimilating, right?
Yes.
And that's...
like, I'm just thinking of the Dutch there recently have brought in a raft of new laws when it comes to immigration. Not over the last 6 months, they brought in a raft of laws where you have to live in the country and pay and have worked constantly for 5 years before you even apply.
Right.
You have to be able to speak Dutch.
Right. Well, at this point, Poland might be the last man standing, right? Because they're just not doing it. They're just not taking any at all. They're like, no, we took Ukrainians. We are not going to be taking anybody else.
They say, the way the Polish put it is, we're full. Our services can only stretch so far. We've dealt with the Ukrainians since 2014.
Yeah, our medical establishment is pushed to the edge. Our scholastic is pushed to the edge. Everything is as far as it will go, and still give our citizens what they deserve as citizens of our country, right?
Yeah, and
Germany is functionally destroyed.
That was their main reason why they're backing out an awful lot of the immigration deals, because they have said, look, we have taken nearly 5 million people so far. We just cannot do it anymore.
Right.
We're stretched. We have over 5 million Ukrainians at the moment.
Right, but they're much more homogenous than would be the Muslims that the other countries have accepted. Angela Merkel years ago said that they screwed up real bad, and then Tony Blair followed the same thing. But you just can't roll back Tony Blair's policies. All of the bad things because of those policies is now in place. And you kept talking about we need to do immigration correctly, which is true, but you still have an issue in both the Republic of Ireland and the UK where you just have too many people that are failing to assimilate. You have no-go zones like they have in Sweden. Like, this is not going well.
No, because you're a completely different culture from the culture they're trying, and they don't even attempt to integrate in, and they don't want to integrate in.
No, they don't. They just want to be a thorn in the side. And it's not like anybody's rushing back to their countries and saying, hey, we'd certainly like to go there. No, that's not how that's going at all. So.
Yeah, no, it's not going well at all.
All righty. Looks like a wrap for this one. For Doubting Thomas, our producer, and Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. We are the A&P Gents. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things to help us beat the algorithm, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for visiting. We are out.